it slow.
I'm not actually jumping the line, things you didn't have anything in the anthology they're passing out to.
Yeah, I do have something in the anthology, but it's more like a meditation, so that's why.
Oh, okay.
So it's for you to explore. It's called Soma, and it's in the anthology. And you really enjoy it.
Okay, my name is Colleen Robbins. I write science fiction, fantasy, and horror. I'm in the middle of the fifth novel in my series, my high fantasy series, that involves intelligent dragons and people and all sorts of problems that people can run into. And I got a little farther behind on it than I'd hoped because of some medical things this year. But anyway, I have 3 pieces that are in the anthology. I'm only going to read one of them. And I have my reading glasses on, so I actually can do it. This one is titled Salt. And since vampires seem to be a theme tonight, I'll just go with that. She woke to a mouthful of cotton, scratchy red eyes, and a malaise that she just couldn't shake. The clock read 11:30, and the brightness of the sun warned Charlene that she was coming down with a migraine. Great, another bad day. She called off work and opened her laptop, then Googled her symptoms. Too many possibilities. She rubbed the sore spot on her neck. The swollen bite mark itched. Bastard gave me AIDS or something. Well, the fertility clinic wasn't going to help me anyway. The coppery taste in her mouth revolted her, almost as bad as the peppermint of her toothpaste. She dropped her toothbrush in the sink when a car backfired outside her apartment. She was rinsing it off with shaky hands when a child shouted. Charlene fished it out of the toilet this time and threw it away. An afternoon nap helped. She woke again after dark, craving salt, another PMS day. She had too many of them. She dressed, applied some foundation, and headed out the door. Heels clicking, she made it halfway to Chin's takeout when another car backfired, and a wave of weakness sent her stumbling against a building. This is too fast, Charlene thought. AIDS doesn't kill this fast. She slid down in a growing puddle and finally understood that she'd been shot. Welcome back! The voice rang with odd harmonics that she didn't recall ever noticing before. She lay full length on a steel table. It was steel, she could smell it, and listened to the drip of water in the next room. She must have imagined the voice. She did not hear it breathing. I know you were awake. The harmonics fascinated her. Charlene opened her eyes. Bare pipes ran along a high vaulted ceiling between the dull glare of fluorescent bulbs. A track light pointed off to one side. She turned her head toward the voice. A pale young man wearing a stained white apron and blue surgical mask slouched against a second table. A tray of surgical instruments lay nearby. He pulled off his gloves with a snap. You're lucky tonight's my duty night. I saved your life. He snickered and then broke into a high-pitched giggle that ended with a donkey-like bray. She winced at the contrast with the harmonics. Yeah, well, thanks, Doctor. Charlene sat up. He snicker-giggle brayed again. Not a doctor, he managed to get out. Just Ed. Okay, Just Ed. I'm better now, so I'm going to leave. She slid off the table. Ed stood between Charlene and the door before she saw him move. You're not going anywhere until your sire shows up. Nope, sorry, no knights in shining armor for me. Hell, I can't even buy sperm at a fertility clinic. Now get out of my way before I hurt you. That set him off on another snicker-giggle bray. You're funny, girl. The guy who made you. Who is he? I'll call him. My name is Charlene, not girl. And there is no guy who made me. I paid for college on my own, got my job on my own, and rose up through the ranks on my own merit. Nobody made me. She gave Ed a toothy grin. You got anything saltier on this place? I could kill for a pretzel right now. He stood back and cocked his head to one side. You can't eat pretzels anymore. Why the hell not? Charlene advanced on Ed, backing him into a corner. Don't tell me I can't have salt anymore. Okay, how about I tell you you're a vampire? Forget the pretzels. Charlene wavered on her feet, unable to speak. Oh, what? This can't be happening. How will I ever have a baby now? Ed edged past her and stood in the middle of the room, eyeing the door. Didn't your sire tell you what would happen? The bastard that attacked me on the street? He never said a word. Yeah, find him for me. I'll rip his heart out instead of just a... Excuse me? Instead of just a piece of his arm. She snorted. A vampire. I thought he gave me AIDS. The vampire community was smaller than she expected. It looked just like every cocktail party she ever attended. The group got their drinks and broke up into cliques. Same large room, same artwork scattered about. Just the outlines were older, or the outfits were older. She felt out of place in her silver midriff blouse and blue striped skirt. Ed handed her a cup of blood. He dressed better away from the board. Charlene swirled her drink as he introduced her to the first clique. One other woman stood across the room, a petite girl barely past puberty. Charlene took a sip of her drink. At one point, she saw her sire across the room. He didn't appear to recognize her. Not too bad looking for a vampire either. Charlene found a young old vamp. He claimed 12 centuries, but could have passed for 17 years, and asked questions about vampire history. She was beginning to get used to the harmonics of vampire speech. Maybe after she spoke with a third vampire, it would seem normal. After a while, she looked around the room at the various cliques and their wine glasses of blood. So, where do you put all the baby vamps when the parents are out partying? Is that where all the women are? The chatter in the room stopped. There are no baby vampires. She didn't see who spoke, but his voice sounded as flat as the tick of a failing metronome. No music at all. There were once. The young old vampire's voice rang loud with the harmonics. My sire was trueborn. So what's the problem? Are you all impotent? At Charlene's words, numerous voices protested. Most lacked the harmonics. Charlene's sire crossed his arms. The problem is with the females, not the males. Modern females are infertile. Such a flat voice. The vampires nodded and agreed, then fell back to their small conversations. Ed touched Charlene's shoulder. You wouldn't want to be whirling around this group anyway. They're kind of medieval. Snicker giggle brain. They keep you pregnant all the time. She noticed the harmonics in his voice again. Only a few vampires in the room, including the young old vampire, had the harmonics. Being pregnant all the time didn't sound so bad to Charlene. She'd always wanted a house full of children. The voices around the room dropped to whispers, and she caught several vampires sneaking glances in her direction. She tugged at Ed's sleeve. Let's get out of here. They walked most of a mile before she spotted the basketball game in a street lit. Drawn like a moth to a flame, she stood at the fence line and watched a particularly tall man in his 20s make basket after basket. Well-built, athletic, he'd make good babies, better than any vampire would. I want him, she whispered. How do I, get vampires hypnotize people? Ed smiled. Hungry, huh? Takes a few months to learn how. I'll get it for you. Wait in the alley. Charlene found a relatively clean spot and leaned against the wall. The tall man walked into the alley like a sleepwalker, slowly oriented on her and approached. He sank to his knees and slowly turned his head to one side. She could smell the sweat running down his back. Get up. Come on, stand up. She didn't want to bite him. She wanted a baby from him. Oh, okay. When he remained still, she loosened his belt and kissed him. Well, that got a response. He straightened his head, leaning into her kiss. A few seconds went by and he pushed her away, leaping to his feet. What are you, nuts? His voice was surprisingly high and tenor. This is a neighborhood watch zone. You go take your business somewhere else before I call the cops. Charlene turned and fled as he pulled out his phone and started to dial. Ed caught up with her 2 blocks blocks later. Good meal? No, meal? That's not what I wanted him for. She punched Ed in the shoulder. He thought he was some kind of streetwalker. Ed doubled over as she punched him. His brave laugh followed Charlene down the street, mocking her. Well, this one better work out. Charlene scooped pretzel salt into her mouth. The discarded box of frozen pretzels defrosted slowly on the kitchen counter. The last one was gay. The one before that worked in an Italian restaurant. Couldn't you smell the garlic on him? And the first one thought I was a whore. Hey, I would have thought you were a whore too, wearing that silver shirt in the alley. She threw the spoon at him. Ed ducked out of the way. William's good. He has kids. Where are we meeting? That little diner on First Street. There's a motel around the corner. Okay, but this is your last chance. If this doesn't work, you have to teach me how to hypnotize him like a month. Ed groaned. Let's go. He always gets here at 8 o'clock for a cup of coffee. Charlene headed straight for the payphone when they reached the diner, then continued on into the bathroom where the phone had no receiver. She waited 2 minutes and returned to the main room. Ed stood in the corner with a middle-aged man wearing a black button-down shirt. At his nod, the three of them left together. Around the corner, Ed signed them into a motel and busied himself at the computer in the lobby. Charlene went upstairs with William. What little he said vibrated with some of the same lines. They kissed, the worst kiss she could remember. But if it resulted in a baby, it was worth it. And he started mechanically unbuttoning the black shirt. An intricately carved wooden cross hung around his neck on a fine gold chain. Charlene backed across the room as William reached for her. The cross brushed her arm as she ducked under his reach and ran out the hall door. William followed her down to the lobby. He pursued her until an elderly woman touched his arm. Father William, what are you doing? Ed ducked and ran. Charlene chased him all the way back to her apartment. He dodged around the kitchen table. I didn't know he was a priest. What's a priest doing with 6 kids? I bet you're not Protestant either, you idiot. She held up her arm, and angry scorch marks marred her pale flesh. Ouch, here, let me take care of that. He poured her a cup of blood and went into the bathroom for the first aid supplies. After he slathered her burn in the antiseptic cream and wrapped it loosely in a bandage, Ed kissed her forehead. He has such compelling eyes, she thought. He didn't look too bad either. Not too muscular, not too thin. When he kissed her on the cheek, she turned to meet his lips. The only thing wrong with pregnancy is the cravings. Human blood just wasn't good enough. She and Ed had 3 children already, with a 4th due in a few more months. She enjoyed the attention the other vampires gave her, each trying to convince her to leave Ed and have a child with them. The infertile ones bugged her the most. She could tell now, just as she could from her first days of vampire. It's the music in their voice. The older infertile vampires were particularly tasty, salty almost. Besides, who would notice if an old vamp disappeared now and then? The doorbell rang and Charlene answered it. Her sire stood there clutching a bouquet of roses. Only yellow blooms, but they would do. She invited him in and went to find a vase. So that I can actually see. And I will turn these back over to Denise.
I'm hoping that Steve will read an excerpt too.
All right.
Howdy, I'm Steve Gordon. I write a lot of crime fiction short stories, mostly, among other things. Live in the area.
So I'm going to start, do a piece called The Bel Air. I can find it here. Perch managed to get out of working crowd control at the plaza, but decided to go over there anyways to watch the big man. Then he saw the black Bel Air. Lieutenant Baxter wanted him to stay on for a second morning shift to work the crowd, but Perch begged off. The lieutenant already scheduled him working Thanksgiving night the following week, and his wife would be upset if he missed spending the day with her and the kids. He got home that morning only to find Peggy pickpacking Johnny and May into the Packard. "We are going to Plano," Peggy told him. "It's my sister's birthday. Are you coming?" Perch shook his head. "I need to get some sleep. I have the night shift all this week." Peggy frowned at her husband, disappointed that his schedule didn't get any better since making detective a year ago. She sighed and pecked him on the cheek. Perch went to bed as the Packard roared off. He lay in bed for an hour before realizing he wouldn't get any sleep. He got up, made some eggs, and dressed in a gray shirt with khaki trousers. Around 9, he jumped in his Ford and drove downtown. "Silly man," Peggy's voice echoed in his head. "You should have just gone to Plano." He parked a few blocks from the plaza and walked over to Carl's Diner. Friday traffic appeared heavier than usual, and the traffic cop at the corner appeared worn and tired. Perch smiled to himself, glad he left that part of the job of his promotion to detective. Carl sat on the edge on the street just behind the plaza. He strolled in as the jukebox played the last chorus of a song Peggy loved, "Needles and Pins." A new tune, "He's So Fine," rolled in after it. Perch grabbed a booth next to the plate glass window that ran up next to the street. He ordered coffee and home fries. Only 2 of the customers from the breakfast crowd remained. Perch enjoyed sitting there between the breakfast and lunch rush. He could relax and watch the world go by behind the window. He planned to hang out at the diner for an hour and then head across to the plaza to watch the festivities. He gazed out the window and watched people pass by, going about the daily routine. The day turned out to be nice, the sky clear and warm. His third cup of coffee sat on the table when he noticed the Bel Air. He began to doze off as he sat there staring out into the street. He would have missed it except for the driver opened the trunk, causing a reflection of light that attracted Perch's gaze and woke him. A 57 black Bel Air with a white hardtop parked across the street. Perch recognized the car since he pulled it over twice in his police career. More importantly, he recognized the tall, thin figure that opened the car's trunk. Al Ricci. Perch frowned and glared through the window at the man he arrested twice. What was he doing here? Perch questioned Mr. Ricci 4 months ago about shaking down a local bar, but the owner refused to identify him. Prior to that, he picked Ricci up regarding a shooting on the east side, but the charges didn't stick. Perch knew Ricci, a minor hood in the local rackets, trying to make a name for himself. Perch watched as Ricci rummaged around the trunk of the car until he finally pulled out a black guitar case. Perch's eyes narrowed into hard slits as his hands balled into fists. Ricci is no musician, and I bet that isn't a guitar. He threw $3 on the table and turned from the window. He grimaced at the out-of-order sign hanging from the payphone. No time anyway. He waved at Carl, the owner, an overweight old man at the rental register. "Carl, call the local station house. Tell them a detective needs assistance at that office building that black Bel Air is parked in front of." He pointed towards the window and waited till Carl nodded he understood. "Give them my name and badge number, 2469. Outside, Perch caught a glimpse of the door to the office building closing behind someone. He jogged across the street, ignoring the blaring horns that filled the air. He looked up the street for the traffic cop, only to find him gone. At the entrance, he paused to rest his hand on the handle of his service pistol that hugged his hip. He slipped into the entrance, and there was no time to wait for the backup. Perch blinked a few times as his eyes adjusted to the harsh light of the hot lobby's fluorescence overhead. He saw an elevator door slide close on the far wall. He hurried over and watched the needle above the door slowly work its way up to the 6th floor. He glanced around for another elevator and saw none. He ran over to the stairs and began to climb. He raced up the stairs, glad he ran 4 miles a day. Still, at the top of the 6th floor, he dripped with sweat and staggered to a stop. His heart raced as he gulped air in deep gust of air for a minute. He started down the dark hallway. Dead silence. The floor seemed deserted. Perch could only see 3 doors in the hall. But which one did Richie go in? Perch walked slowly through the hall, blood roaring through his ears. He unholstered his pistol. The grip felt slick in his fingers. Perch stopped at the 3rd door. Moretti Exports, stenciled on the frosted plate glass. Pay. Moretti, a businessman connected to organized crime, employed Ricci as a driver. The door knob turned quietly as Perch stepped in. He slipped in. Silly man, Peg's voice boomed through his head. You should wait for backup. He wanted Richie, though. This could jumpstart his curve, which was up to something heavy. Perch stopped in the foyer, letting his eyes take in the gloomy interior. Pale sunlight streamed into the dirty windows along the main room's opposite walls. A huge space that stretched across half the floor appeared to be as deserted as the hallway. Several desks lay cast about the space haphazardly. Moretti must have closed his office down some time ago. Need to be quiet so Richie doesn't spot me. Perch's eyes came drawn to a brighter patch of light among the windows, an open window. Beneath it, Richie sat on the floor, putting together a rifle and scope. Jesus Christ. The parade in the plaza, the motorcade. That is crazy. Perch slowly inched his way closer to Richie, trying to make as little noise as possible, until the metallic clatter of a waste can he tipped over echoed through the room. Richie's chin rose from his rifle. Their eyes met and both men froze. Richie moved first, rolling behind a nearby desk. Perch dropped behind another desk. The desk shuddered against his back as a bullet buried itself into the front oak panel. A 22 or 38. The top of the desk exploded and rained splinters on Perch as 2 more shots skimmed the top of it. Silence for a few moments. Perch, is that you? The horrid stench of cordite burned in Perch's nose. Yup. What the hell are you doing here? I was at Carl's having some loft coffee, and I saw your Bel Air. I thought I would come over and see if you wanted to join me. Richie's laugh sounded more like a donkey's bray to Perch. Tell you what, why don't you go back across the street and wait for me? I won't be but a few minutes here. I can't do that, Richie. Sure you can. Richie's smooth voice sounded like a used car salesman. Peg bought the backup from. Look, I got something real important here, and I'm making a lot of money. We can make a deal. Perch wiped sweat from his brow. Got a better deal. Why don't you put the gun down and we go down to the precinct to talk about it? Now there was no emotion in Richie's voice. I can't do that, Perch. Then we sit here till backup arrives. You can't win. Hey, Perch, Have you ever seen the kind of damage a rifle can do near certain range? Oh shit. Perch flattened himself to the ground right before the left side of the desk exploded. He screamed as splinters of wood covered his legs. Perch couldn't hear the second rifle shot, which disintegrated the legs on the left side of the desk. But his hip burned when a big chunk of wood ripped into him. The desk tottered to the left but remained upright. Perch could only hear the ringing in his ears. Cordite stung his eyes. He saw to his right the garbage can he kicked over earlier. He picked it up awkwardly and tossed it in the air. Then he rolled to his left to clear the desk. Richie stood up behind his desk, trying to get a bead on the can with his rifle. Perch sat up and squeezed off 2 shots. Richie spun around and dropped it behind the desk. Perch fell back. He lay there a while, choking on cordite. Perch laid on the floor for a long time. Backup will be here any minute. After a while, Perch decided backup wasn't coming, so he needed to move. The desk wobbled as he used it to pull himself up. He climbed to his feet, whence he could get the sting in his legs and hip. He slowly limped over to the open window, gun extended in both hands. Peg was laughing at him from the back of his mind. Silly man, if Richie could, he would have blown your head clean off already. Richie wasn't in any shape to blow anyone's head off. He lay prone on the floor between the desk he had used to cover the wall. Blood seeped from his chest and made the floor sticky. He looked up at Perch with alert eyes, though, the pistol rifle out of reach. Perch leaned against the windowsill. Hey, what the hell is this all about? Blood reached his lips. Perch barely heard him over the ringing in his ears. A guy, building across the street. Perch gazed out the window at the building across the street. Nothing. What guy? Richie stared up with vacant eyes. Gone. Perch slumped against the window desk. The ringing in his ears slowly changed to the murmuring of the growing crowd outside. Perch went to the window and watched and studied the plaza as the motorcade came into view. It doesn't make any sense. There was no way to get a clear shot at the motorcade from this window. If that is what he wanted. You could get a better shot from across the street at the book depository.
Well, this concludes the formal part of the program, and I really wanted to give a huge shout out to Amy for all the beautiful decorations and the food, and she's not even in the room. But, oh, there she is! Feel free to talk to any of the authors and get their autograph and ask them questions, tell them how much you love the story, or give your opinion on how they can improve it next time. Thank you so much.
Well, another round of applause for the fabulous authors and the time they took, and we really appreciate you coming out this evening, and we're glad it worked out. And I know everyone's very excited about reading the next anthology, so it's a good one. If you would like to come and get your book signed, feel free, ask questions, chat with the authors. Jim will be taking photos, so act natural. You all should be used to paparazzi by now. And feel free to help yourselves to snacks and water afterwards. We've got it back there. But just to be respectful of their time, I'll have you come and get your book signed first before you have some snacks. You can eat all night long down here with me afterwards. And thank you again.